What's going on, Ty? Welcome in, welcome in. Kind of felt like a boring day, but today was definitely what a trend day that was. Okay, my iPad just decided to update. All right, that's cool. All right, but welcome in, guys. Welcome in. We'll get started here. Just a quick second. What a move out of Netflix, though. I did not see that coming. I think the forecast that they laid out, and this is pretty much the tricky part about earnings, especially this quarter itself, with all the inflation going on, with all the companies are going to be pretty much impacted, whether it be pretty much domestic or international. A lot of them are just going to be pretty much impacted, and I did not see that kind of impact coming from Netflix. Basically, guided down. They lost 200,000 subscribers this current quarter. They're pretty much projecting to lose about 2 million on the next quarter, which is just insanely crazy. Pretty time for me just being footport adder and all. I haven't looked at it. I'll take a look at it though, Ty. But again, that move out of Netflix, that was just that was a highlight of the afternoon. I think that kind of caught everyone a little bit by surprise. Given the fact that it already the last quarter it reported earnings, it already got slaughtered. So I think everyone was a little bit more inclined to say that you would get some kind of relief bounce out of it. Maybe at some point it would at least stay, pretty much flat to green here today. But that kind of downside, you can't pretty much answer for losing about forecasting 2 million subscribers come next quarter. So I expect a little bit more out of a pain out of that. I'm gonna take a look at the monthly back yet again. But looking at that chart, the last time I did, it did break a monthly trend line, and that was just disgusting out of that. So I'll take a peep at it. What do I think about CVS tomorrow? Transitory. Do they actually have earnings tomorrow? Just a quick question, but I'll take a look at it anyway. But real quick before I get into the tickers, I'll take a look at Adder, take a look at CVS. We'll see what's up with Netflix real quick. And then just some names that maybe have some continuation or not, maybe in the tech sector here in particular. But today was definitely just a beautiful trend day. You had literally an opportunity to buy any kind of dip throughout the entire day today. That's kind of why I was a little bit more silent on pretty much on chat here today on live, is because when you have such a solid trend day, there's not much to really say that this is gonna just continue. This is gonna maybe fall off the map. It's just a solid uptrend, and this is the way in which you have in bear markets. Typically, in bear markets, even when you have upside, you have these strong, convincing reversals. That's typically what happens in some bear markets. So that's basically what we saw today was just a strong trend day in the opposite direction, which maybe a few of us were pretty much expecting blood on the street. That was not the case today. Does that mean that we're not gonna have blood pretty much maybe tomorrow or to end the week? That's pretty much. I would not say that we're safe and we're out of the woods yet. That's basically what I would say. So just to pretty much look at what I saw out of SPY here today, the biggest thing I was watching was getting up towards that anchor view up that I have from that January high. We pretty much have it sitting right around that 442.66 mark. We broke very convincingly, pretty much made right into basically what I had in my prior zone here sitting at, which was just about that 445 high, about 445.80 ish, is where we wicked the high of the day before pulling back. And that's basically what I want to see is if we're going to be able to reclaim above this zone, sitting above that 446 half, and then we will start to trend towards that 450 mark, which will be, I want to say, not necessarily your mental number, but that's going to be a very big level in which we're going to see if we can trend over that 450 or if that's going to be the rejection spot. So maybe a spot that if we get continuation tomorrow, maybe that's the spot in which we're targeting is getting over that 446 half to maybe make a push towards 450 here by the end of the week. That's pretty much one of your equations. The other equation, as I see SPY, is pretty much just melting with Netflix after hours here, down about $1.80 here on SPY. Is that we could potentially have already put in that high in which we're gonna reject my zone that I have at that 445.80, and then we're gonna watch to see if we can find support at that anchored VWAP now. Now that we're over it of that 442 half, otherwise we basically lose that anchored VWAP. And what it's kind of looking like as well is that it does look like we have a little bit of a megaphone action going on. If I kind of draw that out right now, just a little bit so you see it, kind of feels like we have a little bit of a megaphone action going on right now as well. So that's just something that crossed my attention. I could do it right out to the wicks at the top. But that was just one thing that also caught my attention here. If I do the wicks at the top, I might do the wicks in the bottom. But maybe just something that pretty much catches my attention, see how it plays out. But that anchor view up, if we are able to hold that support level, that 442 half, granted the fact that SPY is down after hours, I'm going to look to see if that potentially turns into a dip buy opportunity tomorrow. And then we can make that move towards that 446 and then 450. Otherwise, if we lose that anchor view up, then I think we end up pretty much flirting with what Avery had from his DEFCON and Ideas channel this morning, in which we're looking down towards below 440, and we basically break this low that we had from today's price action. We'll lose that low, that 437.68. So that's the other scenario in terms of the downside. All right. So let's see what tomorrow brings. I know that Netflix is probably gonna start the day off pretty dull. The other flip side to that is that maybe we actually see Tesla have a monster day ahead of their earnings. So that's another one that's pretty much on the watch list. Maybe we get some kind of flip scenario in which Tesla pretty much leads the day, and that kind of weighs out what the price action is with Netflix here as it continues to bleed likely into tomorrow morning. All right. So that's the other scenario in which I'm pretty much projecting here. Before I maybe take a look at some of the tech names that pretty much crossed my attention was, let me actually take a look at some of the names that you guys pretty much just pointed out. And wow, that's a hell of a chart on Adder on the daily. Let me see, what did it actually do? It's down about 70 cents today. So it wasn't trending at all. It's not the best looking chart, I want to say. Ty, are you still holding this really? I see you said you full ported it. The one thing I will say you had that was going for you towards the end of the day is that you had the nice little downtrend break. You had the retest. So you're basically looking to see if you can reclaim and get back over 620 here. If you can get back over 620, then you have a shot at pretty much taking out that wick high of that 726. But that's pretty much going to be your downfall here will be whether you can break that 620 mark. Otherwise, if you continue, if you pretty much reject that, then maybe you could see a little bit more of a sideways chop action, and then it's going to fade this move. So that's pretty much what I would say about that. But 620 seems like the big level here. You basically had what would you would say is your distribution pretty much along this entire chop level here before you had that sell off to put in that low back from April 19th. All right, so 620 is the level you basically want to watch on Adder. All right. The other one you mentioned transitory was CVS. All right, so I don't see that. Well, let me go to the daily, make sure. All right, yeah, so I don't see that they have earnings coming up. Let's take a look, and I do see that nice flag that's going on there, and I think Tom was probably looking about the same thing as well. Now, the one thing I did want to see here is that can we potentially get a nice little inverted head and shoulders here off of this flag that you have off to the right? That's going to be pretty much the one thing that I would like to watch, in which obviously I can draw out the flag, which is pretty much very noticeable right now going right up to the body of the candles here. So obviously you basically want to see this get over that 105 mark. I think 105 will be that safe territory in which you want to see that break. That was the resistance of the prior consolidation that you had back from earlier in March. And that'll be the level that I want to see it pretty much break out of, not to end up rejecting 105. I want to see a solid movement over that 105 mark. And then you get that continuation, which potentially could end up setting up for a nice little inverted head and shoulders action right here. So that's ideally what I would say I would hope ends up happening is that you can get that nice falling wedge breakout, and then that basically turns into your right shoulder up here. And that'll give you that solid movement that you're watching for over that 105. And then you're basically looking at pretty much taking out that high. Uh, Pretty much my target here would be 108. Above that, then you're looking for the wick high at that 109.69. All right. So 105 is pretty much the line in the sand for me here on this falling wedge on CVS. Obviously, you can pretty much enter early. If I wanted to say your early entry, and obviously I'm saying early, which you could end up rejecting that 105. But if you really want to get in early, 104.14 would be that spot ideally. If you really wanted to get maybe a starter position, then wait for it to break the 105 and then pretty much average up. All right, that would be pretty much the scenario in which I would say is that you want to maybe play it if you were pretty much anxious to get in early, or you want to catch a bigger move. 104.15, you get a starter entry. You see that break over that 105. Now you start to get that curl up on that right shoulder, and you can play it up towards those levels I mentioned. All right, and that's basically how I would pretty much look at that. Other than that, some names that pretty much crossed my attention in particular. I was watching this NVIDIA move earlier on. Yesterday, of course, we had the three cloud alerts that went off. We also had the volume, which was pretty much also about 5 times above average volume yesterday. That was something that caught my attention. I wanted to see if there was going to be any kind of rollover into today's price action. It was pretty much fading a little bit earlier on, but pretty much found its footing. I didn't get that explosive type of move in which on a strong trend day today, you would have easily saw Nvidia up about $10. That kind of gave me a little bit of an instinct in which that we're seeing a little bit more of weakness in this name. That average volume yesterday was maybe some selling volume rather than buying volume. Granted, today's price action. So I'm gonna watch it to see. I do have this zone in which obviously we've pretty much tested this little zone here the past few days, but I do want to see us get out of this 223 up to 225. I would ideally pretty much look to get in an entry here if we can break over 225. If we can break over 225, then I'm going to look towards this gap fill here, in which I'm going to risk up towards this 230 calls. But I'm not going to jump the gun here if we can't break that 225 because today's price action followed pretty much with the broader market just having such a strong trend day. This pretty much smells a little bit like relative weakness out of this. So that's just something to keep on an eye on. But 225 is that line in the sand here. You break north of the 225 mark, then I will look for 230 calls. Otherwise, I'm looking to pretty much potentially short once we get the reversal in the market here. And under 213.30 will be where you look to see if we potentially get a nice little wick fill, a little doggy wick here down towards this low here. We're sitting at 206.50, in which a lot of the selling pressure is going to even be mounting towards that 200 mark. All right. So this is just one. It just pretty much was an oddball to me. It pretty much is smelling like relative weakness in such a strong trend day in the broader market. All right. You could pretty much follow suit also a little bit with AMD. Pretty much looking out to this one off of the 30-minute here. You had that nice little downtrend break. Beautiful downtrend break off pretty much off of being oversold. So that was a beautiful one. You had the nice little curl up. This actually had more strength to me than what Nvidia did. So I'm pretty much looking at this one. I do see a little bit of resistance right around that 98 mark, 98 and a quarter. But if we can break out that over that 98 and a quarter mark, then I'm looking for full gap fill here, in which we're pretty much targeting 100. Pretty much round ball here that fills that mark exactly at 100.67 is where that gap fill is. So this one to me in particular, if you're looking at semis, if I had to give you the either or, I would prefer AMD here with the upside. Granted the fact that it's also oversold here from those lows. I think this one actually has more potential if the market continues its upside. This actually has more room to the upside than what Nvidia has. So that's just something to keep in mind. But that 98 and a quarter is that key level I'm watching for resistance. Looking for it not to reject there. So over the 98 would ideally be basically where you wanted to get an entry here for that $2 scalp. Otherwise, your entry was pretty much when it broke that downtrend, which was down at that 95 mark. All right. So right here, you're kind of chasing, pretty much running right into resistance. Maybe we'll see if we gap up towards that 98 mark, but that's pretty much cutting it very close off of this one. There's not much juice left on the stake here. All right. So either you're playing it up, hopefully you get a nice little dip. Maybe you take the rip up to 98 and the resistance, or you wait for the 98 break and you look for that gap fill at that 100.67 mark. All right. So maybe about a $3 move that you're potentially looking at. All right. Other than that, the other name that crossed my attention was also Facebook, and I pretty much tweeted this one out. Beautiful falling wedge action. I tweeted that falling wedge once that Tom came on live and pretty much reminded me about it because I had totally forgot about the falling wedge that I was pretty much looking at since last week. It's just a beautiful falling wedge. We had the beautiful closing and then we just got that straight rip right out the gate. So that was just a beautiful move. It kind of looks like a nice little impulse up, one a wave, one, two, three. Like to get a nice pullback as you see pretty much after hours here, and maybe we get that last leg up. So I do like this one in particular. I do think we have a little bit more upside. I think you're basically gonna see where you had that prior distribution between earlier April and you're pretty much going to target out here towards 222, 223 is where my overall target is. So that's basically what I would pretty much look at in terms of my upside here. We get a nice little continuation on this impulse up. With their earnings also coming up, I think this one has a little bit more of a leg up here in terms of that 223 mark. All right, so I like that one. Obviously, we want to see what's going to pretty much how it's going to hold here come tomorrow morning with this after hours dip. If we pretty much break under this 212 half, I think that's not going to be a healthy sign. So you definitely want to see it hold that 212.5. Granted that it's down after hours, but that's where I want to see it hold support if that's the line in the sand there for the bottom line. All right. So that's another one. Keep an eye on that. The other one that I know that Sig and Dapper were mentioning was also Shop. Looking at Shop on the 30-minute, Sig and Dapper, I think they sniped the bottom out of this one yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. They probably held calls. But this is another one. Similar situation with Facebook, falling wedge action. Look to see if we pretty much get a nice little support level. Line in the sand that I'm watching here is pretty much holding right around this 583 half is where I want to say that you want to see it hold. If we could hold that 583 half, this is another one that has a potential to basically make one leg up higher, right? The other scenario that I pretty much watch off of seeing it down after hours is that you also do have potential for a nice inverted head and shoulders. So this is something you're gonna want to watch come tomorrow morning. If we do get that nice little drop off here come tomorrow, look to see if we hold it pretty much make a higher low here, and then we get that nice little push right into where I would say is my potential supply zone at this 640 mark. All right, so that 640 mark basically acted as support back from earlier in April. Pretty much also acted as intermediate resistance. Also, pretty much about 2 days after April 7th. So this is another one. 640 will be what my target is. Potentially inverted head and shoulders you're watching for come tomorrow morning. All right. So those are just a few setups, a few legs up that we're continuing to watch. Obviously, Netflix dragging the market. I haven't looked at Tesla pretty much at all today, to be honest with you. I didn't really look at it too much. I know I called out a target earlier on. The other flip side is also watching this gap fill. And this is where, if you missed me mentioning it earlier on, I said that if the upside in the market, overall market continues, despite how Netflix looks, we could see Tesla pretty much lead the day tomorrow ahead of their earnings. It would obviously make sense that we run up Tesla into their earnings and maybe we see a drop off coming out of their earnings. So it all depends. They could steamroll Tesla right into their earnings. Maybe we get that convincing gap fill that'll basically put us at 1056 tomorrow. About a $30-$40 move out of Tesla, which it can do in its sleep. And then that maybe offsets Netflix with the rest of tech pushing. All right. So that's the other flip side of the scenario. Obviously, after hours action is pretty much maybe those of you that held calls overnight, you're probably just a little bit more in the panic mode. Let's see how it settles out tomorrow. I think that tech will continue to give us a nice little push, at least a gap up. We'll see those kind of names recover. But if they don't, then I will look to pretty much cut the losses. And honestly, today was not a day to pretty much swing calls. If I'm being completely honest with you, I wouldn't even swing anything even if I wanted to. Just because when you have such a strong trend day like this, especially in volatile times, especially with the 10-year that continue to climb, even today, it's up about another 8 cents. Likely by tomorrow morning, we push 3 flat on the 10-year bond yield. That's something that is very concerning. We had the little jitters, I think, back-to-back mornings about bond yields rising and the market opening up red. That's something that might be of a concern here come tomorrow morning if that continues to climb here overnight. So that's another concern that I have on my mind. Today just smelled like, it was a little bit overdone because you typically don't see such a strong trend day and barely having an intraday dip. That was not even an intraday dip that we had today. So that's just something that also gave me a little bit of a pause to concern. And so that's something I'm going to be watching here tomorrow. First thing will be likely watching that 10-year bond yield, despite whatever the market price action is come tomorrow morning. So I want to see if that pretty much taps that $3 mark on that for the 10-year bond yield. That'll likely tell me if it's going to be some jitters into the market. And then today was just maybe just a bluff. And that's setting us up for a leg down that's going to be more drastic. All right. So other than that, though, pretty much again, eyes tomorrow morning. Eyes are gonna be on Netflix. Let's see what analysts come out saying, downgrades, upgrades, how it pretty much continues to maybe sell off in the morning hours. Second thing is pretty much watching the 10-year bond yield, and then third is gonna be Tesla to see if that can pretty much offset what that price action is with Netflix here this afternoon. All right, but that's pretty much my three key takeaways here: watching Netflix, 10-year bond yield, and Tesla tomorrow. And that'll likely be the telling story for what we're going to see in the markets here tomorrow. All right. Other than some kind of headline that likely comes out overnight. All right. Also, keep an eye on China. That's probably going to maybe be the fourth thing. I know that China's just been getting wrecked. They got demolished going into today as well. Something to keep an eye on. Look at the Hang Seng futures tonight. That might also be another telling story as well. I would expect a rebound after the slaughter that they had yesterday. So that's something you want to keep an eye on maybe later on tonight once their futures open. All right. So other than that though, that kind of wraps up what I was looking at. I'll see you guys on live tomorrow morning, but appreciate you guys joining. Drop a like, but I'm out. Later, guys.